Hitting record. Hi, Iliana.
Hi, Sonia. How are you?
Good. How are you today?
I'm very happy because it's spring and because you invite me to your podcast that I love, that I am been listening to, and I am super into it.
Yay. Thank you so much. It actually really means a lot to me because actually you were the first person who invited me to your podcast. And I was like totally freaking out before that interview. But you really made me feel like super um, welcome, super, chill. And I'm very glad that you were the first person who introduced me to the world of interviews and podcasts. So
I'm
I
so
thank you for
happy
that.
that, and I think I did a good job because now your podcast is amazing, and I
You
love how you do it
inspire
too.
me. You inspire me. So thank you so much. So Iliana is here today. She's an amazing content creator. She's a writer, a podcaster, a creativity coach, and she creates amazing content in Spanish on Instagram and on her own website. And I just think it's such a fascinating topic because she really brings a lot of different concepts together, but everything comes into this idea of creativity, which is such a human need almost, I feel. So I totally want to hear more because I don't think we've ever had this conversation. Tell me the whole inception story for Explorando Ideas. That is the name of her blog, her website. Tell me more. How did you come up with that idea? Like, how did that start?
Okay, thank you, Sonia, for your invitation. Okay, well, my story, it's, well, Explorando Ideas in Spanish. It means in English, exploring ideas. And everything started when I moved to Montreal. I did a master in creative psychology in Spain, and then I moved with my husband to Montreal, and I arrived here and I met some friends that work on some co-workers that work on a radio in the moment, just people that I was meeting and in an event, in an immigration event. I think it was your brother's immigration event
Nice.
from
Love it.
Ortiz, Montreal. And in this moment in time we didn't know each other, no, but well, I met these guys and they had an online radio for the Spanish community in Montreal, and they asked me if I wanted to create a radio show.
Mhm.
um, I'm original from Venezuela, and when I was in Venezuela, I studied communications, and my last job in Venezuela was as a radio producer. So I was like, oh yeah, like I would love to be on radio again and collaborate with a online radio. Like this was, I think it was the year 2014, 2015. Like Spanish podcast was starting, like there was more like a hype in English, in the English market, but not so much in the Spanish. And they told me that if I wanted to do something with them, and then I like, would you like to create a podcast? No, and I was like, a podcast? What? Okay, I mean, I heard that word before, but I didn't know so much. And I was like, well, okay, yeah, it's like a online radio show or like a digital. Okay, let's do that. So I was like, okay, I want to continue to explore creativity because I did my master. I discovered that we are all creative, that creativity is a capacity that we all have, that we just need to learn to train our creative muscle so we
Mhm.
can improve our connections. Because in simple words, creativity is connecting the ideas that are around the world, that you take with your experience, to mix and match and create something new that is valuable for you and for the world.
Mhm.
So I learned this, and I learned that we all have a creative process. I mean, the creative process of an idea is observation, incubation, insight, and verification. This is like the process of an idea. But to go through that process, we all need to learn what is our process. So I'm jumping in the story because this is the beginning. And then when I was proposed to create the podcast, I was like, okay, I want to explore how this works, how this creative process of incubation, observation, incubation, verification, and verification works in other people. So how they do. So I start like doing interviews. and knowing how people work and how people came up with their ideas. And it was so interesting, and I keep like reading and researching about creativity. And then I have to finish the project. In that moment I needed to do something else, and I stopped doing it. I did something else, but then I was like, oh no, this is what I really love to do and I want to continue this. But in this time I was like, what I'm going to do now, like I mean, I want to continue the podcast, but more to keep in contact with people and make connections and explore the topic. But now I think I have enough experience now to start teaching what I have learned and what I am learning, no, like, because we're always learning. So so I decided to like pivot the idea to more into a coaching based teaching, so I could help other people and train other people with their creativity, with to explore their creativity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's how it became Explorando Ideas, and I start sharing all my knowledge and expertise of how you can develop your creative process and how can you be aware of your float states with creative mindfulness tips and techniques that I call Explora tips.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That is like exploring tips because it's exploring ideas, exploring creativity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, this is so fascinating. And it's funny because yeah, I love doing these interviews again, especially with people that I already know a little bit because we have interacted multiple times, but there's always like a new detail that gets revealed in these exchanges that I'm like, whoa. Like for example, I didn't probably you told me about this, but I didn't remember that you had like a master's in creative psychology, which is so fascinating. I'm like, I didn't
Yes.
even know there was a field called creative psychology. So that's
Yeah, me
genius.
neither. And everything it started like this, like a curiosity, because I wanted to do a master in psychology. I have a bachelor in communications, and then I was looking to do something in psychology, and I found this master that it was called creative psychology and communications, and then I was like, oh, creative psychology. I was like, wow, creative, and that word like resonate with me. But in that moment I thought like creative people were like geniuses, that are people that are born super talented, that go to all these reality shows and show their talent with such as confidence, you know, like, and or writers, or I mean, and I was like, I don't have something special to show or do, or I don't have a passion since I was little. Like, what is a passion anyway, you know, like, I was like, no, creativity is not with me. So imagine understanding what is creativity from a psychological perspective. Wow, what is that? And then I discovered there, like, no, actually, we all have the capacity. Is that we are born with this thanks to creativity. Is, I think, it's the tool that we have. It's like intelligence and creativity are intertwined, and thanks to our intelligence and creativity, it's how humans have evolved.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything, you know, we connect ideas of what we perceive through our senses to try to make something useful. And thanks to our creativity, man, create fire, create myths, create ideologies, create, you know, create what we see physical and tangible and untangible. Everything comes from our creative capacity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Totally, totally. And yeah, there's definitely that huge connect, and something that you said earlier. It's almost like you were describing, you know, different the different stages of the creative process, but also you said something to the effect that the it's almost like the creativity, it's I mean, one potential definition. It's almost like this place where like the external world meets like the internal world, and it's like this whole like merging of like you said, there's like the senses, but then there's like the outer world, and it's just like this whole beautiful process that, like you said, is embedded in literally every single thing that exists
Everything,
in reality.
everything, it comes from our creative capacity. And yes, and this is this a mix of what you're saying, the external world with the internal world. And because everything, that's another myth, no, like you have to be original, and especially like in the advertisement world and things like that, they sell you creativity like the creative writers, the original people, those people that need some like stimulants and a lot of, and they're weirdos and things like that because they have to come with this original idea. Yeah, the more weirdo you are, the more experience you have, the more knowledge you capture, and if you're sensible to it, you capture information from the outside world and you are able to mix it with your way of thinking, your mindset, how you feel, and come something new. But new because it comes from you. It's like, it's every idea, every single idea is the process of those combinations. It doesn't and we mix, we have people that inspire us, things that inspire our nature, that inspire us, and we just take all that and mix it, like when we cook and we make a cake.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we can.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and you're totally right. Like it's really good that you're calling out a lot of those myths, because like you said, some people put creativity on this like super high pedestal. And again, from a mindset perspective, of course, if you think that it's this big kind of like super elusive or scary thing, or like only the top 1% are the most creative, like of course that's not gonna lead anyone to want to explore it. But when you take it from the other side of like, oh no, like everybody has it, it's just, a skill and something that you learn, then it's a lot more different.
Yeah,
um
and it's also a misconception with sorry, but I want to point
yeah.
this out, and it's a misconception with religious belief, like mythological beliefs. It comes from the Greeks, or even further, the idea of the muse and the inspiration, and everything is in star, and God, the creator of the universe and the world. And well, I mean, for me, God is a creative energy. So yeah, the creative energy is where we come all from a creative. We are a product as a person of creation, no? Like everything is creativity.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But yeah, that is so interesting that you bring that reference, and it's totally true that it comes from that era, that kind of like set of beliefs. And yeah, the creative muse, it's like sounds kind of, yeah, elusive and scary, but yeah. Anyway, all this to say that creativity, it's not something that one is simply born with or not born with. It's something that we develop. Am I correct?
Yes,
Okay.
totally. And we train, yes.
Exactly. Yay.
It's there. We have to awake our creative capacity, but we all have it.
Exactly. Exactly. I love that. I love that. So I wanted to talk about, because I mean, I follow your Instagram. I love the content that you create, and I know that you have been speaking recently about this idea of like being neurodivergent, and your history with like that label and how that has affected your creative process. I know that these days we're talking a lot about mental health and all these things, and I think it's very easy for people sometimes to think like, oh, if you have like any kind of diagnosis, be it ADHD or anxiety or autism or something like that, that somehow maybe that's going to hurt your creative process, or it's going to limit you. But what I've been seeing in your posts is that, of course, it doesn't have to be limiting. It's just, there's like, probably a different set of tools or things that you need to embrace. But I just want you to tell me more about like how has been your history with these labels. How did you did you discover like these things? And yeah, tell me more about that.
Okay, well, I think the project is called Exploring Ideas because I started exploring my ideas, what led me to explore my brain, like, and well, everything started like I was doing research on the internet. I don't know, it was a serendipity, like serendipity, like I was looking for something different, and I ended up in reading an article about highly sensitive personality, highly sensitive people. Do you know what is that?
I've
It's
read a
called
little bit, but
HSP it's like the acronym in English. So it's very common as HSP and HSP. And I started reading about this, and I was like, highly sensitive is a trait, and it's not a condition or a neurological disorder. It's just a trait, a personality trait that some people have, because what means is that we have more depth of processing senses. Our sensory processing system is more depth. Our senses are like more awake, so we process everything like in a deep and richer level. So the more sensible you are, the more that you are going to have this, like you feel that you get overwhelmed and or overcharged with just sensory stimulation. So I was like, oh wow, like people have always called me like, you're too sensitive, because I don't know, like I cry for anything, like a commercial, I cry, like I read something. So I mean, I'm better with that, and this is the good thing about knowing your brain. It's like, oh no, now I know that I am just too sensible to this, so I have to take care of myself, so those things doesn't affect me when they don't have to affect me, like so like I am super sensible with temperature, with foods, with anything, like anything, like I'm super sensible. So I start like reading about this and learning about this, and I learned through Elaine Aron. She's a doctor and clinical psychologist. I think she and her husband were the first researchers of this trait. And there's so I read her book and I saw the movies, and I was like, oh yeah, like definitely I am highly sensitive. And it's like highly sensitive people have a lot of strengths, and one of them is like you're highly creative, because your awareness, your senses are more how do you say in English, like yeah, more sensitive, like more awake to everything. So I was like, oh, this is so interesting, and it's so linked with creativity and the creative process, like. So I was reading so much about this, and then I end up in another article that it was saying that people with ADHD, or in this case others neurological disorders, and I put it on parentheses because but then we talk about that, but I mean these are just names and labels that they give to differentiations of ways of processing and thinking, so I read about this ADHD, that is attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder, and I was like, oh, like all the things that are saying about ADHD, like you're distracted, or you are or you have problems managing time, or you have problems organizing your ideas or things like that. So I was like, whoa, this resonates more with me than even highly sensitive, no? So I was like, because yeah, when you have like another wiring, it seems that it makes you more sensible, no? So I like connect both dots, and then I did a test of ADHD online, but they recommend that you find a clinical psychologist. So I found one, or a doctor, a psychiatric that can do this. I found a clinical psychologist, and we start, and he did me like the battery test. And they were like, I don't know, it was like 3-4 sessions, and then he came up with this like, oh yes, you have some like ADHD is an spectrum, and you have some ADHD, but what you are really is into the spectrum of the dyslexia, because dyslexia and ADHD can become more. Normally when you have dyslexia, you have something else like ADHD, but if you have ADHD, it doesn't mean that you're dyslexic or autistic, or like it could be separate, it could come together, and it could be comorbid. And then I was like, dyslexia, and I was like, dyslexia is like people that, in what I saw in that moment, is like these people that just mix letters in writing or reading. And I was like, or don't like to read. And I was like, I love to read, that's impossible. And then he explained me that dyslexia is decoding information, decoding written information when you read, because we have problems like processing words and matching speech and sounds with words. So he said this is an umbrella. Dyslexia is a huge umbrella that have another variants, like the COVID, like it comes with another variants. So it's an spectrum, and it can be low and high, and that's why every dyslexic is so different in their dyslexic world, or any tag that they give you, like. So he was like, you have a bit of everything. It's like dysgraphia, that is like when you have problems writing and your hand hurts, and it was like, when I was little, and when I was in school and I was doing handwriting, that's why my hand hurts so much, and that's why I was not able to finish anything on time. So I start having problems with time management, like. And then he say, oh, you are able to balance, and then I am like, no, my balance is super bad. Oh, it's because there's a bit of dyspraxia. It's like a bunch of stuff, or problems with math, dyscalculia. And then it's like, and then it's like, now everything makes sense. Like now why I struggle as a child so much makes sense in so many aspects, and as a teenager. And then he say like, but there's no problem, a real problem with this. I mean, it's called learning disabilities, because the way that you learn is for you, it's not easy to learn as typical child in a standardized education method, like sitting still and reading and writing and learning and encoding and memorizing. It's like, it's harder for you because you process slower, or you process, depends, slower. Maybe in my case it's slower, in other people it's a bit faster, but it's not like the standard average way of learning. So he said you just need to learn tips and techniques and tools to manage your dyslexia and your ADHD, to regulate your emotions, do mindfulness. So I was already doing mindfulness, like. And all this is like how one thing lead to the other, and the lead to the other, and then it's like, and since then this has been like amazing, because now I know how my brain works, and what tools do I need, and I'm always researching and learning what can I do to improve the way I learn.
Oh my God, that is so fascinating. And I love how, like you said, you kind of like enter the world through one door, but then it's like it led you to like different doors. And yeah, if anything, what I hear from your story, which I love, is like the importance of, like, for everyone, for anyone listening, the importance of not being afraid to actually consult like a licensed medical professional. It's like, yes, reading books and like following people on Instagram, working with different programs, coaches, it's amazing, but there is
Totally.
like a lot of power in actually going to see someone in the medical community that can give you some perspective. And like you said, I mean, I felt a bit of something similar in my case when I understood, when I had like my generalized anxiety disorder diagnosis, which just the fact that someone with some level of authority gave me this label, I was able to just, it's almost like you make sense of your past in a different way. And I think it's
Everything
like,
clicks. It's like,
exactly. and and I think like it helps us like judge ourselves less too, because it's like, okay, now we have like a reason why, and everything makes a lot of sense. So yeah, it's like very important to consult if you have any kind of if you have any doubts, to like really start researching that. And I really love that story, so thank you for
yeah.
sharing that.
Mhm.
So okay, so now that you know, how long have you known that you have this like dyslexia? um
I think it was like 4 years ago. It's gonna be 4 years.
okay, nice.
And it completely changed. And actually this, I mean, in, I don't know, if, for example, in the US, I don't know how it's Canada or other parts of the world, but I know that in the US, because there's more research, it's like there's like a huge diagnosis of ADHD in kids of 5, 6 years old, and it's difficult because because they are too young, and maybe they put them in medications, and some parents are okay or with that or not. But I mean, I trust doctors, and you diagnose this since they are very little, and it seems that the younger that you have a diagnosis, the better, because it could be treated not necessarily with medications. It depends on the person, it depends on the spectrum,
Right.
but you need to understand how your brain works, because you need to understand how do you learn, so you can become confident. Because one of the creative blocks, and also why people think that they are not creative, is because their creativity is blocked in childhood, and especially in neurodivergent brains, like it's super blocked, because it's like, oh, you're not doing the things like the rest of the class, or as the teachers say, so you feel that you can be like the other people. Like normally with all kids with ADHD that are diagnosed with ADHD or learning disabilities. And learning disabilities, this is, I mean, all of this is called a neurological disorder. And yes, in this moment of how the system in society works, yes, it's a disorder, because I can't keep up with your pace, the pace of like the 80% of the population. So maybe yes, it's a disorder, but maybe not. You know, maybe it's just that we need to learn that we just are wired different. Even in neurotypical brains, you are wired different. Everybody has a different personality, it's a story, culture, you know. So how much is a disorder? This is the question that I would like to open, because so for some people say that doesn't exist exactly because of this, because it's like, no, but it's just that people are wired different. That's just a label. Yeah, but that label in a system that work in this way, when they tell you, oh, you haven't been able to do the things like other people does because you have this label, it's like, you know, like, okay, now everything makes sense. No, like we need to name things, like to give
Totally.
them form, no, because if not, is everything is very abstract. But if you don't name things, and then people with, normally especially adults, end up with a general anxiety disorder or mental illness, depression. In my case, well, I think because of this and because of other stories, I develop anxiety like you. Like I'm very anxious too. Well, I'm better now, but like we have said, it's always going to be there. You just need to learn to manage it.
Exactly. No, but it's an interesting question that you ask, because uh yeah, it's like I mean, your whole question on like why call it a disorder. And I mean, I do think sometimes maybe at the very first stage it does help. I mean, whether it's a disorder or not, like it helps to kind of like call it something. But then, yeah, the question is like, why do we say it's a disorder when it's like compared to the mainstream that it's like maybe it's the mainstream that has like a
Okay,
very
sorry.
fast and neurotic pace.
It's like
So,
what was first, the chicken or the egg? No, like it was
exactly.
like, yeah.
Exactly. But it is a good question. Good food for thought. So with that in mind, like give us some tips that you've been using recently. And again, you can share tips that you have, maybe tools that you have learned since getting your dyslexia diagnosis, let's say, or just general tips. I know a lot of these tools are actually good for many people, but
For
tools,
everybody.
let's say for like the creative process. I know I have a lot of friends, a lot of clients that know that they want to be creating something, be it as a hobby or as a creative outlet. They want to be writing or taking photos or whatever. What are some of your favorite tools to get inspired or get in the creative, to get the creative juices flowing?
Okay. Well, the first is to practice mindfulness. It's very important to practice mindfulness, so you can be aware of your process and your flow state, so you can understand, because it's only in float states. A float state is when we are so engaged in an activity that we enjoy it so much that we think that times disappear, and we feel that we are learning and we're growing through what we're doing. Like when the musicians start playing some notes and then compose a song, or when you start writing and then the words start like running out of your head in a high or low or low speed. It doesn't matter, but it's like one word comes to the other and it gives you feedback. You feel that you forget about yourself for a second and you're connected with the universe. It's like that impressive state that you can discover when you practice mindfulness. That's why I call it creativity mindful creative mindfulness tips, because we need to practice mindfulness. We need to just be present and learn to connect with our senses. So then with our open eyes, we can practice mindfulness in every time that we move and we do any activity, to find those flow states, those high energy creative, but where you feel where is your energy. Okay, it's there. It's like when you're doing these things that energize you because you're learning and growing. Okay, oh wow, I am in a flow state. Like, it's super interesting when you do that. The other tip that I always give is like, and especially for neurotypical neurodiversity brains, like take a lot of pauses, take a lot of breaks in a ADHD brain. Like we need a lot of pauses, but also people neurotypical also needs to rest, but maybe neurotypical people can work a bit longer in periods of time. But for example, one tool, and I know that you wrote about this in your blog, in your Instagram the other day, was like the Pomodoro technique. The Pomodoro technique in the neurodiversity community is like a most, like, but for everybody it's a most, because you learn to work, take pauses, and let your brain connect the ideas. At the beginning I was saying the creative process is observation, being mindful, taking everything through your senses, let it get all the information, be absorbed, and then be mixed inside between your subconscious and your conscious brain. And for that you need a break. You need to take a pause. You need to do another activity. For example, if you're writing, stand up and get a cup of coffee every 25 minutes, like the Pomodoro says, or every 40 minutes. You need to learn what are your times, no? And then in that process that you or do exercise or change the activity, or you just switch your brain in that moment, like your brain process all that information, and it's the incubation phase that's when you have like these insights. That's when you go to the illumination phase, that is like, oh, I have this idea, from the project that you were working, or maybe from a project that you were working last week, or something that happened in the morning, and then it's like, I have this idea, now what I do? Okay, you need to write it, you need to or record it in your phone, or do something with the idea. So then in the verification phase you can say like, oh yeah, it still resonate, like when the dopamine goes down, you are like, okay, it still resonate, I like it, I want to share it with the world. Because the more we share our ideas are combined with other ideas, so then the creative process grows and the idea grows. No, it's like a plant. But sometimes you say, well, I like this idea, but maybe it worked for another project, maybe it's valuable for another moment. Like I always say that don't give away your ideas. Like an idea is an abstract, just write it down from that insight moment that you have and keep it there. And then one day maybe you can use it for another project, for another thing in your life, or you just keep it for yourself and love it. And because those ideas come from your creative process, you gave birth to that abstract idea. So like there's like, oh no, you need 100 bad ideas to get one good. Let's say you need 100 ideas, not bad or good ideas, to then choose what's the one that most resonate with you. I will change it to that way, that it can bring value to you and to other people. So But other tips, I don't know. You want me to give more tips? There's a lot. Well, in my
Yeah, no, that is fascinating. That is so cool, and I totally love your reframing of the popular saying of the 100 ideas. And I love it. It's like, okay, let's drop the label, good and bad, and then, let's go with the one that resonates. And I totally identify with what you're saying, because as someone who took a long time to come up with different business ideas, and I've gone through so many different phases and so on, it's like, it is true that we tend to get kind of attached to the idea sometimes, but then at some point it's like you kind of learn to like, sometimes
and
let them go, or just set them aside and be like, okay, let's leave you here, like you said, record it somewhere, but not
yeah,
get.
let it incubate. Let it see how if the idea grows or not. Like another tip is like create your ideas like in topics like I don't know, you have this idea, for example, for this podcast and about a topic, I don't know, this I want to talk about this, or I want to learn about it myself. And you just have the idea of things that inspire you, and you start putting there, like in that box, in that category, all those writings of your ideas or recordings. And then you see the more information you put there, the more it grows, no? And if not, doesn't. I mean, this is a very practical advice, especially for creating projects
Mhm,
or businesses or something like that. But you can do that with any idea that you have
mhm,
to evaluate the weight of your idea, or how much you keep resonating with that idea and loving that idea as time goes. Yeah, sometimes you have to pause, think, and then come back. And it's
mhm.
okay. Like the creative process never ends. It's always cyclical. You can always start again, or you can just let it rest and let it I don't know, become organic for something else.
Exactly, exactly. No, that is so that I love that. That's very, very useful. Thank you for sharing that. So yeah, this has been amazing. We're gonna start wrapping things up. And so tell us more where people can find you. You do content in Spanish. It's amazing. And I think everyone should learn Spanish because it's an
Just for this,
amazing,
thank you.
it's an
Yes.
amazing language. And so, yeah, tell us more what you're working on, where people can find you, how we can support you, and all that stuff.
Okay. Well, my website is called Explorando Ideas. Yes, it's in Spanish, but you can practice your Spanish with with my content, with all this content. And one day I want to do this in English, but right now I started for the Spanish community. I mean, I think it's important because we also have so many things in English
Mhm.
that is also if we know another languages to to give content to that market, that we also have a huge Spanish community and and a huge amount of people that want to learn Spanish, like in French also, or Italian, or we need
Mhm.
content in all languages, no?
Oh,
So you can go there to read my exploring tips about creative mindfulness. Right now, I'm working on a book that's going to be ready this year. Like I'm almost there. It's in the end of the creative process. But and I'm also working on some online workshops. But well, I will keep people posted. You can go to my website and register to the newsletter that right now is just like when I have all the information, I will send newsletter. Right now it's just to have your contact information. So when everything is out, I can provide all the information.
mhm.
In the moment that you hear this podcast, maybe you hear in a year, okay, it's already everything there. So you just can join the newsletter to get all the information. And and that's it. Instagram at Explorando well, you leave it in the comments. So so, and Facebook Explorando Ideas. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Yes, we will definitely leave all the links in the show notes and everywhere. And I'm super, super excited for that book. I cannot wait to read it. So thank you
Yeah.
so much, Iliana. I love this conversation. I could go on for hours, so maybe we can do another
Yeah,
one
me
at
too. I
some
was like the hour pass. Like
I know. I know.
yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you
but we
so
have to keep
much.
it short because people needs time to
to
recreate and
rest,
do and breathe.
to
Yeah.
rest and to process all this amazing.
Yes, exactly.
Yay. Thank you, Iliana.
Thank you for your invitation.
Bye.
Bye.